Good morning. For today, torrential rain floods parts of Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas on Monday, killing at least one.
The family of missing teen Kiely Rodni confirms her death. The 16-year-old's car was found upside down in a lake on Sunday.
Dr. Anthony Fauci is stepping down, and Republican lawmakers are vowing to investigate him even when he's out of office.
President Biden's pause on oil and gas leases was recently ruled unlawful, but his latest inflation package could bring big changes to the energy industry.
And an entrepreneur finds a unique solution to a problem children in poor countries are facing by creating apparel that grows with the child.
Good morning. Welcome to NTD. I'm Kevin Hogan.
Good morning, and I'm Evelyn Lee. Today's Tuesday, August 23rd. Floods in Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas on Monday. Torrential rain flooded parts of the cities, submerging vehicles, and officials warned drivers to stay off the roads. NTD's Jeremy Sandberg has more on the record rainfall.
Rescue workers struggled to respond to hundreds of calls from residents taken off guard by the sudden downpour. Water seeped into some businesses and homes.
My apartment is literally flooding. I just woke up and should I call 911? What do I do?
At least one death has been attributed to the deluge. A 60-year-old woman from a Dallas suburb was killed when water swept her vehicle off the interstate. She was found when waters receded. Dallas County declared a disaster and requested federal and state assistance for affected individuals. The National Weather Service issued a flash flood warning in the affected areas on Monday and asked people to stay off the roads. Dallas police say hundreds of accidents were reported during the flooding. Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport reported over 9 inches of rain over 24 hours on Monday, the most on record since 1932. Hundreds of flights were delayed and canceled. At White Rock Lake in Dallas, the once dry concrete spillway was turned into what looked like river rapids. Dallas Fire Rescue says it responded to 195 high water incidents, rescuing 21 people and 10 dogs. The Fort Worth Fire Department says it received around 500 calls for service, performing over 170 high water rescues and investigations. The major flood threat is expected to subside in the area on Tuesday as storms shift eastward toward Louisiana and Mississippi. Jeremy Sandberg, NTD News.
Now, the Dallas-Fort Worth area has been under extreme drought in recent months. In less than 24 hours between Sunday and Monday, Dallas received an entire summer's worth of rainfall. In other areas across the southern United States, around 9 million people are under flood watch today.
Now an update on the missing California teen Kiely Rodni. Rodni's family confirmed yesterday that she is dead. The 16-year-old went missing after attending a party at a family campground on August 6th. A family spokesperson made the announcement shortly after police held a press conference on Monday. Officials say a private search and rescue dive team found the teen's car and human remains upside down in 14 feet of water in a Nevada County lake on Sunday. The body was not immediately identified. Numerous law enforcement agencies had already searched the lake. The Nevada County Sheriff's Office says they need to debrief to analyze what happened. Authorities say the investigation is ongoing and could take weeks.
How did we not find it when we were searching? The lake was extensively searched with side sonar, with an ROV. We had divers, we had swimmers. I think that's part of what we're going to have to go back to do and debrief. You know, when peace officers are out in the field and volunteers and searchers, it doesn't mean that they're experts in the field, right? These are sometimes ancillary duties, and we're calling from other agencies to try to jump in. And tracking underwater is an extremely difficult thing to do. A lot of this equipment is high-end, very expensive, and you really need to have a lot of practice and expertise.
California Highway Patrol says Rodni's death is being investigated as a car collision. The investigation will include any factors that might have contributed to the teen's death.
And we're turning our attention to Atlanta for a moment here. A woman has been arrested in connection with shootings involving 3 people at 2 different locations in Atlanta's Midtown neighborhood. According to police, the suspect shot 2 people at her apartment building before traveling a mile across town to shoot another victim a half an hour later. 2 of the victims died and the third was taken to a hospital. Police say the shooting was not random and that the victims were targeted specifically. However, they say they do not know what prompted the attacks. The woman was arrested at the Atlanta airport before going through security. The weapon was also recovered at the airport. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens says security at the airport was never compromised. A SWAT team of at least 15 was sent in to investigate the area. Local residents were in lockdown for 2 hours after the gunshots.
Former President Trump filed a lawsuit on Monday asking a federal court to block the FBI temporarily from reviewing materials seized from his home on August 8th. Trump is demanding a special master be appointed to oversee the review independently. Trump also asked the judge to have the Justice Department provide a more detailed receipt of seized property. He's asking for all items taken outside the search warrant scope to be returned. The motion was filed in a federal court in West Palm Beach, Florida.
And a federal judge recently ruled that President Biden's halt on oil and gas leases is unlawful. But Biden has now signed off on other big changes for fossil fuels and renewable energy. So what does this mean for you and the future of American energy? NTD's Melina Weiskup reports.
Nearly 2 years after Biden issued an executive order to pause oil and gas leases on federal lands, a federal judge has ruled this action was unlawful. Now the federal government must continue to lease lands in the 13 states that challenged the law. The states sued Biden, saying the lease ban violated the Outer Continental Shelf Lands Act. Nearly 20% of American oil production comes from the Outer Continental Shelf, so this ruling is good news for Americans' pocketbooks.
The industry and the markets in particular, knowing that that oil is going to be on its way, you're going to see some relief even right now. So it'll be a gradual process for the impacts of resuming this oil production affecting gasoline prices in a good way. And if gasoline prices fall as a result of this, the Biden administration will be taking credit for something they've been fighting so hard to oppose, and that's the irony.
This ruling comes as President Biden recently signed the so-called Inflation Reduction Act into law. This new law incentivizes American businesses and consumers to transition to renewable energy by offering massive tax credits. It also imposes penalties on oil and gas producers through higher royalty rates and fees on methane emissions. So the judge's ruling, as well as the new Inflation Reduction Act with the green energy tax credits, how do you see all of this combined impacting the oil and gas industry moving forward?
Well, there are so many policies being implemented that are working at cross purposes, or in this case, a federal court decision. So while the Biden administration is fighting tooth and nail to shut down production where 20% of our domestic oil production is coming from, because of this judge's decision, that's going to help mitigate the harmful effects of many other Biden policies. So it's going to be a mix.
After a record high average of $5 a gallon in June, gas prices have continued to drop over the past month, now sitting at $3.91 a gallon. It's still well above the $2 average from 2 years ago. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Dr. Anthony Fauci plans to step down after decades of public service, but Republicans say that won't stop them from investigating him if they win control of Congress this November.
And the CDC.
Dr. Anthony Fauci, the nation's top doctor who became a household name during the COVID-19 pandemic,
As many people vaccinated.
is leaving office after 5 decades of service. In a Monday statement, Fauci says he'll step down in December as director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases and as chief medical advisor to President Biden. He stresses that he's, quote, not retiring, but pursuing the next phase of his career. While former President Trump has said,
But Fauci is a disaster.
President Biden praised Fauci on Monday, saying his work has touched all Americans' lives.
Gain-of-function research has the potential to unleash a global pandemic.
Fauci's retirement, meanwhile, comes as Republicans vow to investigate him over allegations that he funded virus research in Wuhan, China.
Again, in 2014, Dr. Fauci gave another grant to DASIC for SARS research in China. DASIC partnered with who? The Wuhan Institute of Virology.
A slew of Republicans said Monday that Fauci's resignation won't shield him from a probe, with Senator Rand Paul vowing, quote, a full-throated investigation into the origins of the pandemic. And House Minority Whip Steve Scalise saying Fauci will have, quote, ample time in retirement to testify. Fauci, meanwhile, said this last month.
Investigate me for what? For telling people to get vaccinated? For telling people to wear a mask? If they want to investigate me for that, go ahead.
And while Representative Andy Biggs accuses Fauci of, quote, conveniently resigning to avoid accountability, Fauci has previously denied that pressure from Republicans would cause him to quit.
So because there are a lot of people who have ideas about conspiracies and changing minds and flip-flopping, that's not a reason to step down. Not at all.
Reporting by Iris Tao, NTD News.
And the New York State is lifting all COVID-19 restrictions for K-12 schools. Governor Kathy Hochul made the announcement yesterday. That's just ahead of the coming school year. Students will no longer have to isolate or quarantine after being exposed to someone with COVID-19. And single cases of COVID-19 won't mean that entire classrooms will have to be sent home. Hochul told reporters that 2 years' experience with the pandemic have proven that previous approaches had been largely unsuccessful and even damaging to children's well-being.
A school board in Wisconsin is banning teachers from displaying political messages in classrooms or on themselves, and this includes pride flags and Black Lives Matter flags. Students are reacting.
The Kettle Moraine School Board in Wisconsin voted last week to keep a code of conduct in place. The code says staff cannot use their positions to promote partisan politics, sectarian religious views, or, quote, selfish propaganda.
After initial legal analysis, the expectation is that teachers and administration will not have political flags or religious messaging in their classroom or on their person. This expectation includes pride flags. This expectation relates to staff emails and email signature lines.
The policy also says teachers cannot include their preferred gender pronouns in their email signatures. The superintendent of the school board has said that MAGA hats, BLM flags, and We Back the Badge signs can be political as well.
We're in a world where politics are highlighted, and it puts people in uncomfortable positions. I feel the staff can fully support students.
Only one member of the school board voted against the policy. The school board says the policy is not meant to discriminate against any groups, but simply to let teachers know where to draw the line. The ban applies only to staff members, not students. 2 high school students in the district began a petition against the policy last month and have gathered over 13,000 signatures. The Wisconsin ACLU says it is investigating the policy. The school district covers 10 schools in Waukesha County and serves more than 3,500 students. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
Coming up, former NBA player Dennis Rodman is reportedly planning a visit to Russia seeking the release of WNBA star Brittany Griner. The State Department says his trip could only complicate the matter. And Ford plans to cut a total of 3,000 jobs. It comes as part of a major reshuffling as the company races to catch up with Tesla in developing software-driven electric vehicles. Stay tuned for more right after the break.
In every country communism gains power, authoritarianism and death followed in its wake. Communism promises a world without suffering, and yet does the exact opposite. The party dictates what is right and wrong. As an investigative journalist, I want to understand why.
Heritage, virtue, and true tradition. Masters from all disciplines display the essence of their styles at the 7th NTD International Traditional Chinese Martial Arts Competition. On August 28th, the finals will be broadcast live from New York. You can watch online, or you can be there in person. Tickets on sale now. For details, visit martialarts.ntdtv.com.
Welcome back. Former NBA player Dennis Rodman is reportedly planning a visit to Russia seeking the release of basketball star Brittany Griner. The State Department says his trip could only complicate the matter. Two-time Olympic champion and WNBA star Griner was convicted by a Russian court and given a 9-year sentence on drug charges. The United States has offered to exchange her for Victor Bout, a Russian arms dealer serving a 25-year prison sentence in the United States. State Department spokesman Ned Price said if Rodman travels to Russia, his trip could complicate and hinder ongoing diplomatic efforts, effectively delaying the release of Griner and former U.S. Marine Paul Whelan, who was sentenced in 2020 to 16 years in jail for spying. It's not the first time Rodman has sought to engage himself in international diplomacy. He is one of a handful of Westerners to have met North Korean head of state Kim Jong-un.
We put forward a substantial proposal to Russia to seek the freedom of Paul Whelan and Brittany Griner. We believe that anything other than negotiating further through the established channel is likely to complicate and hinder those release efforts. We've also provided very clear guidance to American citizens owing to a number of threats, not the least of which is the threat of wrongful detention, that Americans should not travel to Russia.
U.S. officials on Monday discouraged Rodman's reported plan to travel to Russia to seek the release of Griner.
In some other news, Australian Border Force has seized over 5 million doses of fentanyl in a shipment from Canada. That's the highest on record. Australian authorities say the 25 pounds of fentanyl, along with 66 pounds of methamphetamine, were hidden in an industrial machine known as a lathe. It was shipped from Canada to the port of Melbourne in December 2021. Police launched an investigation in the beginning of this year when Australian Border Force officials found the drug stash. The Australian Border Force commander says fentanyl is usually detected in quantities of a gram or less, so 25 pounds of pure fentanyl is extraordinary. The commander said the seizure is a great concern for the Australian community.
Here's an update on last week's tragic story of the 2 deceased children who were found in suitcases in New Zealand. South Korean police say that they believe they have found a possible relative. Immigration records show an unidentified woman in her 40s entered South Korea in 2018. With no record of departure, police suspect the South Korean-born New Zealand citizen is still in the country. Her past address was registered to the storage unit where the suitcases had been stored for years. The woman is suspected to be the children's mother. South Korean police say that they have no authority to track her down and detain her because she remains a New Zealand citizen who may have committed a crime in New Zealand. The investigation can continue only when New Zealand officially requests an extradition.
Let's move on to some business news. The iPhone 14 will start production in India, as Apple tries to move manufacturing out of China. The move follows clashes between Beijing and Washington and Chinese lockdowns slowing production, and that's at a time where American brands look to move production out of China. Now, India is becoming increasingly important for those companies. The first iPhones from India are expected late October or November. Apple hopes the new deal will reduce manufacturing wait time with future iPhone launches.
Ford will cut a total of 3,000 salaried and contract jobs, mostly in North America and India. This comes as the company restructures to catch up with Tesla in the race to develop software-driven electric vehicles. Ford Chief Executive Jim Farley has been saying for months that he believes Ford had too many people and that not enough of its workforce has the required skills as the auto industry shifts to electric vehicles and digital services. Like Tesla, Ford wants to generate more revenue through services that depend on digital software and connectivity. In an email to staff, Farley said the company's cost structure is uncompetitive versus traditional and new competitors. Rising prices for batteries, raw materials, and shipping are putting additional pressure on Ford and other automakers. Rival General Motors in late 2018 moved to cut 14,000 jobs as it prepared to accelerate its electric vehicle strategy. Leaders of the United Auto Workers Union have expressed concern that electric vehicles will mean fewer manufacturing jobs and more jobs dispersed to non-union battery and EV hardware factories.
And coming up, an entrepreneur finds a unique solution to a problem children in poor countries are facing, helping them stay healthy, happy, and confident by creating a durable shoe that grows. And rugby has always been played on land. Now folks from Switzerland ask why. Find out more after the break.
NTD's Capital Report. It's about getting answers, cutting through the fog of politics. It's about your questions and our chances to ask.
What is the net impact of the American Carson Graves? Thank you for joining us.
We're speaking to those in power to find out what does this mean for the people. We're here so you are in the know.
The 2022 NTD 8th International Chinese Vocal Competition will be held from September 29th to October 2nd at the Merkin Hall of Kaufman Music Center in New York City. The competition is honored to have specially invited vocalists with the world-renowned Shen Yun Performing Arts to serve on its panel of judges. The gold award is $10,000. For more information, please visit vocal.ntdtv.com.
Welcome back. There's small things that make a big difference. That's what the founder of an international nonprofit is doing to help impoverished children around the world by creating a unique shoe that grows.
Kenton Lee is the founder of Because International, a nonprofit organization that's fighting poverty with products.
We just want to do our small thing that we think makes a big difference. And I think if we all can do some small things that make a big difference, I really think those all add up.
Lee created a durable brand of shoe that can adjust and expand in size. He first had the idea while living in Kenya. When volunteering at a small orphanage, he noticed many local kids didn't have shoes that fit, or any at all.
This little hook right here looks a little bit like a number 5, and it can go into any of these loops. So the kids can make it shorter, or they can put it in some different loops to make it longer.
Creating the shoes wasn't without challenges. It took 6 years to develop the concept and find the right company to work with. Major shoe companies said no to the idea, so Lee and a friend took it upon themselves to build different prototypes.
Lots of failure, lots of rejection, but super glad that we kept going because we finally did it. We had made a shoe that could grow 5 sizes and last for years.
Eventually, a shoe design company jumped on board.
We told them our idea and they loved it. They thought it was amazing, and so they jumped in with us.
Over the last 7 years, they've distributed over 350,000 pairs of shoes that grow to kids in over 100 countries.
We had a story come out online about our shoes and it just took off. We accidentally went viral.
Working with around 5,000 different partners to connect directly with kids who need them the most.
It's a small thing that makes a big difference. It helps them be a little bit more healthy. It helps them attend school more often. And it just helps make them more happy and confident when they have a good pair of shoes that fit.
The shoes are made in Kenya, produced by a local factory employing around 20 people.
We're really big believers in practical compassion, that if you see something you can do to help, jump in, give it a try. It might not be perfect, you might not do it very well, but there's a lot of power in small things, and even if you help one person.
Lee encourages others to follow their genuine interests and develop their ideas to fruition. He says starting small can make a big impact.
That's absolutely genius, and I'm really glad they kept going.
Yeah, I mean, regular shoes wear out. I know I've gone through many, and not to mention, you outgrow them. And while these innovative shoes are one small step for man, America's space agency is working on a big leap for mankind. $4 billion later, and NASA is set to launch their test flight of Artemis 1. The over 300-foot rocket will take 3 test dummies on an orbit around the moon.
A mega-moon rocket on a slow 6.4-kilometre ride aboard a giant NASA crawler before reaching its launch pad this week. One of the final steps before the unmanned Artemis 1 begins a mission set to journey farther than any spacecraft built for humans before.
Now we are go for launch.
It is the first time in about half a century that a NASA-built rocket is set for a lunar-bound liftoff. On August 29th, the Artemis 1 mission is set to begin a 42-day journey that travels around the moon before returning to Earth. Sitting atop its rocket is NASA's Orion astronaut capsule. Designed to separate from the rocket in space, it carries 54 kilograms of cargo, including a commander moonikin, a suited mannequin that can collect data on what a human crew might experience. 2 other phantoms, Helga and Zohar, will be aboard, made of material that mimics the soft tissue, organs and bones of a woman. This time the mission is unmanned.
We are pushing the vehicle to its limits, really stressing it to get ready for crew.
But the launch of the most powerful rocket ever built kicks off a more ambitious plan. This is the start of NASA's Artemis program, eventually build a lunar base and make way for further exploration to Mars and maybe even beyond.
When do you think we can visit the moon, Kevin?
I don't know. Something for the bucket list, maybe?
Absolutely.
Well, first let's take you to Switzerland, and then we'll talk about the moon. Lake Geneva locals were in for a surprise when a 30-yard rugby field was brought onto the water. 21 teams competed in a water rugby tournament for the 50th anniversary of the Lausanne University Rugby Club. NTD's Flinders Kingsley has the story.
Water rugby, a fantastic opportunity to showboat your rugby skills on the beach. But you need to know how to swim.
It's a five-a-side rugby played on a floating platform. Where to score, you have to jump into the water.
Tackle rugby has 2 forms, rugby league and rugby union. They have similar rules, although rugby union is more complex. Nevertheless, in neither rugby league nor union history has a player ever gone swimming mid-game.
Well, I was quite surprised because it's a really slippery surface. It's a little more difficult to find your footing than on normal ground, but otherwise it's extremely fun.
Water rugby is only played touch. Tackling might be too dangerous. The spear tackle has also been banned.
As part of the 50th anniversary of the Lausanne University Rugby Club, we wanted to organize a special event to invite everyone to discover rugby and to invite Swiss rugby to come and celebrate our anniversary with us.
After some sport games, the players might dump the water cooler on one of their teammates after a victory. In water rugby, this may not be necessary. Flinders Kingsley, NTD News.
You know, that makes me think. I wonder what rugby would be like on the moon. But you know, the average depth of Lake Geneva is 500 feet, and it has a maximum of 1,000 feet, and it's explored by 4 submarines.
Wow, you definitely want to know how to swim then.
Yeah, and it sits on the border of Switzerland and France in the Alps, so it's a beautiful place in the world.
Wow, yeah, so you need to know how to swim and speak French.
And both at the same time, maybe.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's all for today's program. We'd love to hear from you, though. You can share your thoughts and your story at goodmorning@ntd.com. So please shoot us an email if you'd like. Thanks for watching. I'm Evelyn Lee.
And I'm Kevin Hogan.
Thanks for watching us on YouTube. Did you know YouTube only keeps selective videos on its platform? So if you want to make sure you get the full picture, just subscribe to our newsletter. Go to newsletter.ntd.com and sign up. It's free.